Krellick stood at the observation deck of his starship, his four eyes fixed on the blue planet below. Earth looked peaceful from space, but the veteran warrior knew better than to judge a world by its appearance. After all, he had helped conquer 12 different species across the galaxy, and each one had taught him something new about war. The mission briefing had been simple: observe and report on human military capabilities. The Scifi Empire needed to know if Earth would be an easy conquest or a troublesome one. From the initial reports, humans seemed like an easy target. They had barely reached their own moon, and their weapons still used primitive gunpowder and explosives. Commander Krellick, a young officer, approached him, holding a datapad. "The disguise unit is ready for testing." Krellick turned away from the window and followed the officer to the ship's laboratory. The holographic disguise technology was one of the Empire's greatest achievements. It would make him look exactly like a human, down to the last detail. The thought of having only 2 eyes and no mandibles made him uncomfortable, but he had endured worse for the Empire. As the technicians prepared the disguise unit, Krellick watched videos of human military training on his personal screen. His mandibles clicked in amusement as he saw human soldiers running with heavy packs on their backs. "How primitive," he muttered. "In the Empire, we use gravity adjusters for strength training." The more he watched, the more convinced he became that this would be his easiest mission yet. The humans fought their wars with bullets and bombs, while the Empire had energy weapons that could vaporize entire cities. Their vehicles rolled on the ground or flew with simple jet engines, while Scifi ships could bend space itself. "Your infiltration papers are ready, Commander," another officer announced, handing him a folder. "You'll be posing as a foreign military observer at a place called Fort Benning. It's a training facility for their elite soldiers. They call them Army Rangers." Krellick read through his cover story. According to the documents, he was Major James Chen, a military observer from a country called Singapore. The Empire's intelligence division had done their usual thorough job, creating a complete background that would stand up to any human verification. "The humans are so trusting," Krellick said to his second-in-command. "They actually allow foreign observers to watch their training. In the Empire, such a thing would be considered treasonous." As the ship entered Earth's atmosphere under its cloaking shield, Krellick felt a strange feeling in his gut. Despite all his experience, despite all the worlds he had helped conquer, something about this mission felt different. He dismissed the feeling as nonsense. After all, what could a species that still fought with projectile weapons possibly teach a warrior of the Scifi Empire? The landing was smooth and silent. Under the cover of night, Krellick activated his holographic disguise. His 4-armed, scaled body transformed into that of a human male of average height and build. He checked his reflection in a mirror and practiced his human facial expressions one last time. "I will report back every 3 days," he told his crew. "The Empire expects a full assessment within 1 Earth month. Based on what I've seen so far, I doubt it will take that long to understand everything we need to know about their military capabilities." As he walked away from the hidden ship toward his waiting ground transport, Krellick had no idea that he was about to begin the most eye-opening mission of his long military career. The humans were about to show him that true military might comes in forms he had never imagined. The morning sun had barely risen when Krellick, disguised as Major Chen, arrived at Fort Benning. His first observation was scheduled for 500 hours, something called PT, or physical training. He expected to see basic exercises, nothing special. He was wrong. In the pre-dawn darkness, hundreds of soldiers gathered on an open field. The air was cold, and Krellick could see their breath forming clouds in the dim light. A muscular sergeant stood in front of the group, his voice carrying across the field without any sound enhancement technology. "Today's just a normal PT day, ladies and gentlemen," the sergeant shouted. 5-mile run, followed by combat conditioning. Krellick watched as the soldiers began their run. In the Empire, warriors trained individually, each focusing on their personal best. But here, something different was happening. The stronger soldiers weren't racing ahead to prove their superiority. Instead, they fell back to run alongside those who were struggling. "Come on, Martinez. Push through it. You got this, Johnson. Half a mile left. We finish together." The alien observer couldn't understand this behavior. In Sci-Fi training, showing weakness meant automatic failure. Here, the humans seemed to gain strength from supporting each other. After the run, the real shock came. Without rest, the soldiers moved straight into what they called combat conditioning. Krelix watched as they performed exercises that seemed designed purely to cause pain, pushing their bodies up and down on their fists, holding heavy weights above their heads until their arms shook, carrying each other across the field in different positions. A young soldier collapsed during one exercise. In Sci-Fi training, he would have been immediately removed from the program. Instead, 2 other soldiers helped him up. "Come on, Parker, we got you," one said, supporting him. "Just 10 more seconds. Count with us." The fallen soldier got back up. His face showed pure agony, but he completed the exercise with his companions counting loudly for him. Krelix felt his real mandibles twitch under his holographic disguise. This made no sense to him. Later that morning, Krelix approached the sergeant, maintaining his cover as Major Chen. "Your soldiers," he said carefully, "they seem to embrace suffering." The sergeant laughed. "That's not suffering, sir. That's just Tuesday. You should see them when we really train hard." "But why push so far? Surely it would be more efficient to train within comfortable limits." The sergeant's face became serious. "Comfortable limits. War isn't comfortable. Major, we push past our limits here so we know where they are when it really matters. And we do it together because in real combat, you're not fighting for yourself. You're fighting for the soldier next to you." Krelix made notes in his tablet, his 4 fingers hidden by the hologram of human hands. The concept was alien to him. Sci-Fi warriors fought for glory, for the Empire, for personal honor. This idea of fighting for each other seemed inefficient. Yet he couldn't deny the results he was seeing. As he watched the soldiers head to their next training, covered in sweat and dirt but laughing together, Krelix sent a brief message to his ship. Initial observations suggest humans have unusual approach to warrior conditioning. They deliberately increase difficulty through group suffering. Further study needed to understand purpose. What he didn't write in his report was the strange feeling growing in his gut. For the first time in his long career, he was seeing something he didn't understand. And he had a feeling this was just the beginning of his surprises. 3 days into his observation, Krelix witnessed something that shook his understanding of warfare to its core. The Rangers were beginning what they called Hell Week, a training exercise designed to push soldiers to their absolute limits. The morning began at midnight. Krelix watched from the shadows as instructors woke the soldiers with explosions and smoke grenades. In the chaos, the soldiers had just minutes to gear up and form ranks. Some hadn't slept for over 24 hours due to previous exercises, but none complained. "Welcome to Hell Week," the lead instructor announced. "For the next 5 days, you'll be pushed beyond what you think you can handle. Some of you will quit. Some of you will fail. But those who make it through will know what they're truly capable of." Krelix observed as the soldiers began a series of brutal challenges. They marched for miles carrying heavy packs, navigated obstacle courses while instructors fired blank rounds over their heads, and solved complex tactical problems while being sprayed with cold water. What fascinated him most was how they handled food and rest. The instructors gave them just enough food to survive, and sleep came in short bursts of 15 or 20 minutes. In Sci-Fi training, warriors were kept in peak condition to maximize performance. This deliberate weakening made no sense to him. Major Chen, one of the instructors, approached him during a brief break. "What do you think of our methods?" Krelix chose his words carefully. "I'm curious why you deprive them of basic needs. Wouldn't well-rested, well-fed soldiers perform better?" The instructor smiled. "We're not training them for their best day, sir. We're training them for their worst day. when everything goes wrong, when they're hungry, exhausted, and scared. That's when this training pays off. As night fell on the second day, Krelix saw this principle in action. During a river crossing exercise, one soldier, barely able to stand from exhaustion, couldn't keep up. In the Empire, this would mean automatic failure. Instead, something remarkable happened. His teammates divided his gear among themselves, adding to their own already heavy loads. One soldier stayed by his side, talking constantly, keeping his mind focused. They moved slower, but they moved together. Why help him? Krelix asked another soldier during a brief rest period. He's clearly the weakest link. The soldier looked at him strangely. Because next time it might be me hitting the wall. We leave no one behind. That's not just a saying, sir. It's who we are. That night, Krelix sent an urgent message to his ship. Humans deliberately create conditions of extreme stress and deprivation in training. Purpose appears to be psychological rather than physical preparation. Most concerning observation, they become stronger when supporting their weakest members, not weaker. As he watched the exhausted soldiers help each other clean their weapons before their next challenge, Krelix felt a growing unease. His species had conquered worlds with superior technology and strength, but this was different. How do you defeat an enemy who grows stronger through hardship, who turns their weaknesses into strengths through sheer willpower and brotherhood? For the first time in his career, Krelix began to wonder if the Empire had underestimated their potential opponents. These humans weren't just soldiers training for war. They were forging something his species had never considered. An unbreakable bond that turned individual warriors into something far more dangerous, a family willing to die for each other. The real test of Hell Week was just beginning, and Krelix had a feeling his reports back to the Empire were about to become even more unsettling. The fourth day of Krelix's observation brought him to a training exercise that the Rangers called Force on Force. Two teams would fight against each other using special training weapons that fired paint instead of real bullets. To Krelix, it seemed like a children's game until he saw it in action. The scenario was simple. A small team of 12 Rangers had to defend a position against 30 attackers with armored vehicles. In Sci-Fi warfare, the outcome would be obvious. The stronger force always won. Always. They have no chance, Krelix muttered to himself as he watched the defending team prepare. Their equipment was basic. Rifles, some smoke grenades, and simple communication devices. Against 3 armored vehicles and overwhelming numbers, it seemed like a waste of time. The exercise began at dawn. The attacking force moved in with confidence, their vehicles leading the way. Krelix expected a quick surrender. Instead, he witnessed something that would change his understanding of warfare forever. The defending Rangers had spent the night digging small holes and covering them with leaves, positions that looked natural but gave them perfect firing angles. They had mapped every approach and prepared multiple fallback positions, but most surprisingly, they had studied how the morning sun would shine directly into the attacker's eyes. "Watch this," one of the instructors said to Krelix. "They're about to spring their trap." The first vehicle moved exactly where the defenders wanted it. A perfectly timed smoke grenade blinded its cameras. Rangers popped up from hidden positions, marking the vehicle with paint shots that simulated destroying its tracks. At the same time, others used the confusion to eliminate half the attacking infantry before they could react. The remaining attackers tried to regroup, but the defenders were already moving to new positions. Every time the attacking force thought they had found the Rangers, they were shooting at empty space while paint rounds hit them from another direction. Within 30 minutes, the exercise was over. The defending team had lost only 2 soldiers. The attacking force was completely eliminated. "Impossible," Krelix said, forgetting his cover for a moment. "The smaller force should not win." The lead instructor looked at him curiously. "Size isn't everything, Major. These Rangers just proved that intelligence, preparation, and adaptability can beat superior numbers and equipment." Later that day, Krelix observed another exercise. This time, the Rangers had to capture a building with no weapons at all. Instead of charging in, they found a maintenance worker and simply talked to him, gathering information about the building's layout. They then used this knowledge to enter through a forgotten basement door, completing their mission without firing a single shot. That evening, as Krelix prepared his daily report, his hands shook slightly. How could he explain to the Empire that these humans were rewriting the rules of warfare? They didn't just fight with weapons. They fought with their minds. His report was brief. Humans demonstrate unprecedented tactical flexibility. They turn disadvantages into advantages. Most disturbing observation, they can achieve victory even when severely outgunned through superior strategy and adaptation. As he watched the Rangers reviewing the day's exercises, laughing and pointing out their mistakes, Krelix realized something that chilled him to his core. The Empire's superior technology might not matter as much as they thought. These humans had mastered something far more dangerous than advanced weapons. They had mastered the art of winning against impossible odds. And they seemed to enjoy doing it. The storm came without warning. Rain poured from dark clouds, turning the training grounds into a muddy mess. But it wasn't just rain. The nearby river was rising dangerously fast. Krelix watched from the command center as emergency alerts flashed across the screens. "Sir, the downtown area is flooding," a young officer reported to the base commander. "Local emergency services are overwhelmed." In Krelix's experience, this was the moment when warriors would protect their base and equipment. Instead, he watched in amazement as the base commander immediately began mobilizing troops. "Get the Rangers ready. I want helicopters in the air as soon as it's safe, and get those amphibious vehicles moving." The commander turned to Krelix. "Major Chen, you're welcome to observe, but this will be a real emergency operation, not a training exercise." Within minutes, the same Rangers who had been training just hours before were gearing up. They moved with purpose, loading rescue equipment instead of weapons. Their faces showed no fear of the dangerous conditions, only determination. Krelix followed one team in their vehicle. The streets were already under 2 feet of water, and the rain kept coming. Ahead, an apartment complex for elderly residents was being threatened by the rising water. "Building power is out," the team leader announced. "We have potentially 20 elderly residents trapped on upper floors. No elevator access." In the Empire, such a mission would be considered a waste of military resources. But these humans didn't hesitate. Rangers plunged into the cold water, forming human chains to reach the building. They carried elderly residents on their backs down slippery stairs, some making 4 or 5 trips into the dangerous structure. One ranger pulled off his helmet to give it to an elderly woman, protecting her from the rain as he carried her to safety. Another gave his waterproof jacket to a shivering man. These were the same warriors Krelix had watched training for combat just days ago. "Why risk your warriors for civilians?" Krelix asked a sergeant during a brief pause in the rescue operations. "Surely civilian emergency teams should handle this." The sergeant looked at him strangely while wringing water from his uniform. "We are the emergency team, sir. Being a ranger means being ready to help anyone who needs it, not just fight wars. That's what makes us who we are." As the night wore on, Krelix witnessed more acts that challenged his understanding. Rangers worked alongside civilian rescuers without any concern for rank or status. They rescued pets with the same dedication as people. When they found a family's photo albums threatened by water, they saved those too. Near midnight, exhausted Rangers were still working, now helping to fill sandbags to protect homes from the rising water. These were the same soldiers who had endured Hell Week, but instead of resting, they volunteered to stay and help. Krelix's report to his ship that night was longer than usual. "Witnessed unprecedented behavior. Human warriors possess duality we cannot comprehend. Same soldiers trained to destroy enemies will risk their lives to save elderly civilians. They view this not as a waste of military resources, but as a core part of their warrior identity." Most concerning observation: their training for war makes them extremely effective at saving lives. As he watched Rangers finally returning to base, muddy and exhausted but still helping each other, Krelix felt something he had never experienced in all his years of conquest. Doubt. How do you fight an enemy whose warriors are equally skilled at destroying and saving? Who views protecting the weak as a sign of strength, not weakness? The Scifi Empire had never encountered anything like this before. A week after the flood, Krelix discovered another side of the Rangers that left him more confused than ever. Instead of combat training, the soldiers were loading trucks with building materials and medical supplies. Today's mission is community outreach, the company commander explained during a morning briefing. We're helping rebuild Mrs. Johnson's house. She lost everything in the flood. After that, we're visiting the children's hospital. Krelix watched as hardened warriors who could take down armored vehicles now carefully measured wooden boards and carried boxes of supplies. They worked with the same precision they used in military exercises, but their weapons had been replaced by hammers and saws. The roof needs to be finished before the weekend, a surgeon called out. Johnson team, focus on the framework. Martins, your team handle the electrical work. Remember, we're building this to last. What amazed Krelix most was how the Rangers used their military skills in completely different ways. The same team coordination he had seen in combat exercises was now being used to raise walls and install windows. The leadership skills that commanded soldiers in battle were directing volunteers from the local community. During lunch break, Krelix approached a group of Rangers sitting with civilian volunteers. You seem comfortable with this work, he said carefully. Is this normal for warriors? A young Ranger wiped sweat from his face. My dad was a Ranger too, sir. He always said our job isn't just about fighting wars, it's about preventing them. Sometimes that means building schools instead of destroying them. Later that afternoon, the team moved to the children's hospital. Krelix expected a quick visit, perhaps a formal ceremony. Instead, he watched as Rangers in full uniform sat on tiny chairs, reading stories to sick children. Others taught basic first aid to teenagers, making it into a game. One particular scene caught his attention. A veteran Ranger, one who had impressed Krelix during combat training, was sitting with a young girl who had lost her hair to illness. The soldier was showing her pictures of his own daughter and teaching her how to tie different kinds of knots with her hospital blanket. She reminds me of my little girl, the Ranger explained to Krelix later. Being strong isn't just about fighting, sir. Sometimes it's about showing others they can be strong too. That evening, Krelix observed a joint training exercise with soldiers from other countries. Rangers were teaching their techniques to warriors from across Earth, sharing knowledge freely. In the Empire, such sharing of military expertise would be considered treason. Why teach others your methods? He asked the training coordinator. Because when we work together, we all get better, was the simple reply. Besides, many of these soldiers will go home and use these skills to help their own communities. That's a win for everyone. Krelix's report that night was troubling for his superiors. Human warriors defy conventional classification. They seamlessly transition between combat roles and community service. Most disturbing revelation. They actively work to prevent conflicts through humanitarian actions. They build trust with potential enemies through shared peaceful activities. As he watched the Rangers clean up their tools and prepare for the next day, Krelix realized something profound. The Empire had always judged military might by the ability to destroy. These humans judged it by their ability to build, protect, and unite. A memory from his childhood surfaced, a teacher explaining that true power comes from breaking the enemy's will to fight. But here, these Rangers weren't interested in breaking anything. They were building something far more powerful: bridges between people, trust between nations, and hope in communities. And somehow, this made them more formidable, not less. On his final day at Fort Benning, Krelix sat alone in his temporary office, staring at his computer screen. After a month of observation, he had to write his final report to the Scifi Empire. For the first time in his career, he was afraid to tell the truth, not because it was dangerous, but because he knew his leaders wouldn't understand. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he began to type. 2. Supreme Military Command, Scifi Empire. Subject: Final assessment of human military capabilities. I must begin this report with an unprecedented recommendation. Do not attack Earth. Not because humans are stronger than us, or because their weapons can match ours. They can't. Attack Earth because they will defeat us in ways we cannot defend against. Let me explain what I have witnessed. First, humans don't train warriors. They build families. Their soldiers fight together, suffer together, and celebrate together. When one falls, 10 rise to help. This makes them impossibly resilient. Second, their weakness is their strength. Where we demand perfection, they embrace imperfection. Where we discard the weak, they strengthen them. This means they have no weak links to exploit. Third, and most importantly, their warriors are not just destroyers. They build homes, save lives, and help their communities. This means that every time we would destroy something, they would rebuild it stronger together. But here is what truly makes them dangerous. They adapt. I watched them turn flooding into a rescue mission, turn combat training into community service, and turn enemies into allies through shared peaceful work. The Empire measures victory by what we destroy. Humans measure it by what they protect and create. We cannot defeat an enemy who grows stronger from helping others, who turns compassion into a weapon, and who gains victory by building peace. If we attack Earth, we might win battles. Our technology is superior. Our weapons are stronger. But we will never break their spirit because they draw strength from something we don't understand, their connections to each other. They will study our tactics and find ways to counter them. They will learn from every defeat and come back stronger. And most dangerously, they will show our own warriors a different way to be strong, one that doesn't require the destruction of others. Final assessment: Earth's military strength cannot be measured by their weapons or technology. Their true power lies in their ability to unite, adapt, and turn any situation, even defeat, into eventual victory. Recommendation: avoid conflict with Earth at all costs. Instead, I suggest something the Empire has never done before. Learn from them. They may be the key to our own evolution as a species. End report. Commander Krellix. As he sent the report, Krellix walked to his window one last time. Outside, a group of rangers was running their morning PT, encouraging each other as always. A few were the same soldiers he had watched build houses, rescue flood victims, and teach children. His communication device buzzed with an incoming message from his ship. Report received. Return to ship immediately for debriefing. Krellix knew his report would cause controversy in the Empire. Some would call him a coward, others a traitor. But as he watched the humans below, working together in the morning sun, he knew he had written the truth. He had come to study an enemy's weakness. Instead, he had discovered a different kind of strength, one that his own civilization had never imagined possible. And for the first time in his life, Krellix wondered if perhaps the Empire, not Earth, was the primitive civilization after all.